I'm Gary Rebholz, and in this live webinar we're going to be talking about color correction tools in Sony Vegas Pro. We're going to take a look at some of the tools in the application, and hopefully during the course of the discussion I can spark some ideas and some, give you a little bit of knowledge on how to use these tools to get color correction tasks done in your video projects. Producing the show for me today is Michael Bryant, and at the end of the presentation, Michael will feed me some of the questions that you're sending via the chat window. So go ahead and send those at any time during the presentation, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end. Now, I think I might go a little bit over today, over my 45-minute time, so maybe we'll run a little bit longer today, but we'll still try to squeeze in some of those questions. Now, before I get started, I want to make one thing clear from the very beginning. I am not a trained colorist. I'm going to show you how to use some of the tools in Vegas Pro, but it's really going to be up to you to learn about color correction techniques, to learn about the proper way to use these tools. I'm going to show you basically how I use them as an amateur. So I invite you not to be the guy that sends me an email saying, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Let's just take a look at the tools, and I'll leave the education on how to be a colorist up to you to pursue at a different time. So that caveat out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the PowerPoint and get started with the presentation here. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be exploring several tools in Vegas Pro, and many of these tools are also available in Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum. So if you're running Platinum, you'll be able to do a lot of the things that we talk about here, and I'll try to remember to call out when I'm talking about a Pro-only feature. The tools that we'll be exploring here are in the list. So we'll be looking at several filters: brightness, contrast, the three-wheel color corrector. The secondary color corrector, we're going to have spend some time with that to see what that's all about. Color curves, level filters, and so forth. There are some Pro-only features that I'm going to use quite a bit during the presentation, and those are the video scopes, the split screen preview, and the Bezier masking tool if I get that far. But you'll see how I try to use all of these tools in conjunction with one another to improve the quality and the look of my video. So the tasks that we'll complete fall into three general categories here. We're going to be enhancing a shot. We're going to look at some tools for matching two shots. So maybe you have two different cameras and the video doesn't look the same from both cameras. We'll take a look at how to try to match the colors in those two shots. And then a little bit of fun, we're going to alter some reality using some of these tools. So let's see if we can hop over to Vegas Pro. And I've just got a project mocked up already that has several clips in it that I want to use during the presentation. So let's just get started with something basic: enhancing a shot. If you've ever watched some of the free training videos that we have online at sonycreativesoftware.com/training, if you've watched the Les Stroud series, you might recognize the clip that I have in my project right here. It's just an aerial shot of a lake and some surrounding trees. Well, in addition to not being a trained colorist, I'm also not a trained camera person, and when I shot this clip, I didn't do a very good job of setting the exposure properly and so forth. And the clip looks pretty washed out. So what I want to do is to use a simple technique, and I actually use this quite often in my videos, and that is the brightness and contrast filter. The brightness and contrast filter basically just helps me make these colors pop out. The brightness portion of the feature basically just adds and subtracts values from the color channels to make the image lighter or darker. And the contrast parameter, it adjusts the absolute difference between the lightest and the darkest areas in the video. So right now, if I'll zoom in on this clip a little bit here, and you could see hopefully that the clip looks pretty flat. It's pretty washed out. It doesn't have much definition between the light and the dark, and we can make this a lot better with the contrast brightness and contrast filter. So let me zoom back out here for a second and go to my video effects window. And in my video effects window, I'm just going to choose the brightness and contrast filter and drop it on to the event in my timeline. Okay, that brings up the window here, and I'll try to move things into place so that you can see the results of this, and then I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, so brightness and contrast, as I said, just helps me pop the colors. So keep your eye on the video preview window, and I'll set this to best quality so that you can really see it. As I start adding some contrast, I'm just going to start bringing up the contrast, and you'll notice that things they start looking richer. The trees start to pop out a little bit. The lake looks much bluer. Now, I don't want to overdo this. If I go too far, it looks crazy. But if I just pop it up a little bit, I can start making this look much richer. Now, maybe I want to bring down the brightness slightly and help it out a little bit more. I've also got a contrast center slider here, which I can just play with and see if I can make it look a little bit better. So the brightness and contrast filter is a pretty basic tool, but it actually is quite powerful in that you can fix a lot of problems with it. So keep your eye on the video preview window, and I'll toggle the brightness and contrast off and on so that you can see the before and after. So here's the after. I've applied brightness and contrast. Notice how blue the lake is and how rich the trees are down in the corner here. If I turn the brightness and contrast off, you see it's really quite a drastic difference. Now, when I went too far with the contrast, you saw that it started to look crazy and colors started to kind of blow out and it didn't look good. So you really do have to be careful not to go too far. But you'll be surprised at how much just a little bit of contrast and a little adjustment on the brightness and contrast can really help your videos pop. Now let's take a look. I'm going to move this down into the corner here for a second, and I'll open up the video scopes. You can't see it because I'm off of the zoom, but I don't want to bother zooming in. But I'm choosing View, Video Scopes, and opening the Video Scopes window. And in particular, I want to take a look at the histogram. So let's change this to histogram. Now the Video Scopes is a Pro-only feature, so if you're running Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum, you won't have this. But let me toggle off the brightness and contrast filter. When I do that, notice the histogram. It doesn't spread out to the whole available range, and it just sort of has a big mound in the middle and nothing at the ends. The histogram is a real good place to start if you're wondering if you need to add some brightness or contrast to your project. Now, when I turn the brightness and contrast back on, what you're going to see is this will spread out. It'll spread more down to 0, and it'll even out a little bit. So let me toggle that back on. And now look how much more even the histogram is. So the histogram, if you've wondered how to use video scopes, the histogram can give you some good information about the contrast excuse me, and brightness in your project. Let me adjust the contrast slider, and you'll notice as I lower the contrast, that histogram narrows down. And if you see the video preview window, the image gets flatter and flatter. And as I raise the contrast back up, I start getting definition. The histogram starts spreading out and starts looking pretty good. Now another tool that you can use is the waveform scope. And this also gives you some information about contrast. Notice as I bring the contrast down, the waveform squeezes together and everything's sort of concentrated in the middle there. As I bring the contrast up, you can see it spread out. Now, I'm keeping my eye on the upper limit here, because if I go too far, you'll see the dots start piling up at the top edge of the upper limit here, and basically just means I'm blowing out the colors, and you can see the crazy results in the video preview window. So both of these tools, the waveform and the histogram, give you some good information about the adjustments that you're making. So I like to bring the video scopes up, and I often just set the video scopes so that I can see all of them. And then I can use those to make sure that the adjustments that I'm making to contrast or brightness or whatever isn't causing a problem by hitting things to the limit, or you know, some other problem that I might not notice if I don't have my scopes open. Okay. Now, there's another tool that you can use in a similar situation. Let's go to another clip here on my timeline. Here's a clip of a band playing in a studio, and it's a pretty dark clip. You can see, again, let me bring the histogram up. You can kind of see the problem. It has a narrow range, so it looks like we could use some more contrast. And this problem is a little different than the last one, where the other one sort of had a relatively evenly shaped bell curve. This one has a much steeper drop off on the high end than it does on the low end. Now, if I try to put a brightness and contrast filter on this, let's go ahead and do that, and just raise the brightness, notice what's happening in the histogram over here. Notice that as I adjust the brightness, the histogram is basically just moving. It's not changing. It's just moving to a different portion of the spectrum of the available area. And in the video preview window, as I brighten this up, it just looks flat and dull. So I might say, okay, I need a little contrast. So I bring the contrast up, and maybe bring the brightness up. Okay, it looks better. If you look in the video preview window, it looks better, but you still have a very uneven shape to the histogram. So what I might want to do instead of the brightness and contrast filter is to use the levels filter. So I'm over in my, let's spread this out a little bit. Over in my video effects window, I find levels and drop that into the chain. Now I've got the brightness and contrast muted, so it's not going to affect it for right now. Let me zoom back in a little bit. The levels filter, I'm sure this is you know, technically inaccurate, but I like to think of the levels filter as sort of the brightness and contrast filter on steroids. It can do basically the same thing that the brightness and contrast filter can do, but because you have more control, I can control the high end separately than the low end. In other words, I can change the slope of this fall off in the histogram. So let's see if I can show you what I mean. With the filter here, I gotta make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. Okay, now if I just adjust the input end of this a little bit, notice what's happening to the histogram now. The edge of the histogram, when I was changing the brightness, you saw this whole thing move, so the left corner was moving. But watch the left corner as I adjust this filter now. It doesn't move nearly as much, and what it's basically enabled me to do is to leave that left edge kind of where it is, so that my lows are basically where they were before, and raise the highs so that now that fall off is a little less drastic. And I might then again go back to my my waveform just to make sure I'm not topping out here as I bring this in. And you can see if I go too far, now I'm beginning to build up right at the limit here. So I'll back off a little bit. And let's take a look at all the scopes. So now you can see we've got a much more even histogram here. And if you look at the clip in the video preview window, and I'll toggle the levels filter off and on, you'll see what a difference it makes. So basically what I've done is I've really popped out the highs and kind of left the lows alone. And I have that flexibility because I'm using the levels filter. Now the levels filter goes even deeper than that, and let's show how you might use the levels filter in conjunction with the brightness and contrast filter. So let me turn the brightness and contrast back on. The combination of both of those is maybe a little much, so I'll back off on the levels filter, maybe bring the contrast up a little bit, and maybe just add a little bit of brightness. But notice that there's a green tint in here to the guy's arms and the shirt and so forth. What the levels filter enables me to do is to create my adjustments on separate channels. So I had been working in all channels, but I'm going to change this to the red channel. And now in the red channel, I'm going to adjust this, and just if I go too far here, you see how much red I'm adding to the clip. But if I go just a little bit, you can see that I'm sort of counteracting the green and giving their arms a much more realistic flesh tone color. Let me toggle the levels on and off, and you see the difference. Here's on and here's off. Notice the green tint on everything, and when I turn it back on, we've got a much more natural skin tone. So here's a case where I'm using the brightness and contrast to get me close, and then add the levels filter with its much more fine adjustment capabilities, with more controls and the ability to control just single channels, and gives me a lot of flexibility to really go in and create corrections to skin tones or whatever other color tint problems that you might have. Okay, let's move over to another set of clips here. Here are two clips of this fella sitting in front of an airplane being interviewed. And it was a partly cloudy day. So in this clip, he's in a little bit more sunshine than in the second clip, where things are a little darker. Notice his face in particular, where it's much darker in the second clip. So again, we might use the levels filter to help solve this problem. So let me expand my view here so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go to my video effects, choose my levels, drop it on that second clip. Now what my task here is to match these two clips so that they look a little bit better when they go from one to the other. And to do this, I'm going to use the levels filter, but I'm also going to use another feature. This is also a feature that's only in the Pro version of Vegas software, and that is the split screen preview. And a lot of people don't know about this feature, so this is good information for you. What I can do with the split screen preview feature is place my cursor in the clip that I want to match to. So I'm in the clip that I want the other clip to look like. And once I'm there, I'm going to click the Copy Snapshot to Clipboard button. So what that's done is it's taken this frame of video and copied it to my Windows clipboard. And it's just going to sit there. Now I'm going to put my cursor in the other clip, the one that I want to brighten up a little bit to match the other one. And what I'll do then is to set my split screen view to clipboard. And now what we see on the left half is the picture that I took, the snapshot that I took, and on the right hand is the live video. And if I play this, you'll see that the right half is playing and the left half is just that static video. But what this gives me is a reference, and I can leave it at left half like it is, or select the right half or all, or I can just drag through my preview window and take out a section. And this is what I like to do, because now I've got the man's face and shirt, and I can clearly see between the two of them the clip that I'm trying to match to and the one that I'm trying to match. So now I've got the levels filter on here. I already put that on. So now we can play with the levels filter and see if we can match these up. So keep your eye specifically on the line between the halves of the man's t-shirt. And I'm just going to adjust my input end on the level filter. And I'm just watching it. And when I see the line sort of disappear, then I'm happy with the matching of his shirt. And my background matches pretty well, the plane matches pretty well, and so forth. So if I turn off my split screen preview, and here's a little tip for you: if you use split screen preview, remember to turn it off, because a lot of times we get calls from people that say something's goofy with my preview window. Well, we find out they left their split screen preview window or preview button on, and that does make it difficult to work. So turn it off. And now if I play through these two clips, you can see that they match much better. Now, we still have, in my opinion, we still have a sort of a problem with his face in this clip. It's really quite dark. And as you saw, just applying the levels filter to the whole thing didn't really solve that problem. So let me show you another technique that you might be able to make use of. What I'm going to do is in my timeline here, I'm going to hold the control key and drag this clip down to the track below it. So I've just made a copy of that clip and put it on another track. Then I'm going to access my event pan cropping tools and make this a little smaller so you can see it. And I'm going to add a Bezier mask. Now, if you've ever wondered what Bezier masks are all about, here's a good example of why you might want to use one. Bezier masking is available only in the Pro version of Vegas software. And what I'm going to do is just quickly make a rough mask around our hero's face. So here we go. And there we have a rough mask. Now if I mute or if I solo that first track, you can see that the first track, all that's showing through is the man's head. And I can come in and adjust this a little bit tighter, make it a little bit tighter so that I'm affecting only his face, basically. Okay, so there we have the mask. And again, if I solo that track, you see in my video preview window, that's all I've got. Well, what that enables me to do is to access the levels filter and play around with just his head. So there you go. If I put the input end all the way up, you see that it basically just blows out that portion. But if I'm a little more careful about it, I can lighten up his face a little bit. See, there you go. And if I toggle the levels filter off and on, you'll see the difference, right? Now, obviously, we don't want that hard edge, so I'm going to go back to my Event Pan Crop tool and work with my path a little bit. I'm going to set my feather type to out and just feather it a little bit so that it is less noticeable. Now, I would take more time to do this properly, but you could see the difference. If I mute that top track, notice how much darker his face is. Now the track is muted. And if I unmute it and you see the correction, we've popped his face out a little bit. So using another copy of the clip on the bottom track and putting a Bezier mask over the top of it has really enabled me to go in and adjust just his face without affecting the rest of the clip. Okay, let's see. Let's talk a little bit about color curves and the 3-wheel color correction tool in Vegas Pro. Let's go back to our band in the studio. And we have here the two clips. Notice the arms on this fella are nice and pink. We took a look at this before, and this is more green. What we can use another tool that we could use to try to fix this, and I think this is something that you'll find a lot in Vegas Pro, is there are several different ways that you could try to solve problems like these. I'm going to use the color curves filter, drop it on that second clip. And the color curves filter, it basically just enables me to adjust the color channels, the red, green, blue color channels, either as a whole or independently. So here again, we've got the arms are looking a little green, and I want them to look more red. So what I might do is change my channel to red and make an adjustment to the curve. And as I do, you see some red tone coming into the clip. Okay, let me zoom in on this a little bit and maybe get a better look at the video preview window here. And I'll toggle the curves on and off so you can see the difference. Okay, so here the curves are on, and let me just toggle them off, and you'll notice a greener tint. Sorry, it's kind of a struggle finding room with just one monitor to show you everything I want to show you here. So here are the color curves on, and here it is off. And you can see, especially up in his t-shirt and along their arms in here, when I toggle the correction on, that I'm making a much more natural skin tone here, a more natural gray to the t-shirt instead of the green tint. So here's on and here's off. So the color curves give you some flexibility to adjust individual color channels in your video and help you do a little bit of color matching. Now let me turn that off and zoom back out so you can see what I'm doing over here. I'm going to go get the color corrector filter, and I'll just move this out of the way for a moment, and I'm going to drop that into the chain. Okay, so here's the three-wheel color correction tool that we've got available in both Vegas Pro and Vegas Movie Studio HD Platinum. And this is just another way to maybe tackle this problem. The three-wheel color correction filter basically breaks your video up into three color tones. You've got your low tones, mid tones, and high tones. And it enables me to adjust the colors inside those tones. So again, I might look at this and say, well, it looks like it's got a green tint here in the low tone or the mid tones. My low tones would be these areas over here of black, like the head of the guitar. Mid tones are more, they're not white, they're not black, they're sort of falling in the middle. And so I'm suspecting that this green that we're seeing in the arms and the t-shirts and so forth is more of a mid-tone problem. Now on the color wheel, basically the way this works is you've got your colors along the outside, and colors that are 180 degrees opposite each other are complementary colors. And basically what I can do to eliminate one color is to add its complementary color. So in this case we've got a green tint, so green is over in this area, so I want to add something in this area of magenta. So if I just start dragging my circle up into that area, if I go too far, notice you've got a real magenta tint to the video. So if you're going after some special effect, like they were playing under a magenta light, you could do that. But in this case, we just want to kind of correct that green tone. So let me set that back to 0 and just add a little bit of the magenta just to sort of counteract the green tone in their arms. So let me toggle this on and off, and keep your eye on the video preview window so that you can see the difference. So here's the with the filter on, and here's with off. And you can see on, off. You can see the green tone. I'll make it a little more obvious for you by adding a little more magenta. So it's off right now. Got the green tone. I turn it on. You've got the magenta tone. So if you have this more reasonably placed, you can get a more accurate skin tone. Now in this case, I might also want to play with the high tones a little bit. And so if I bring my highs to magenta, I can bring it all the way out. What I usually do is just bring it all the way out to the edge of the circle, because in the color wheel does two things. When I place this dot in the color wheel, I'm specifying basically two things. I'm specifying the hue. So right now I've specified the hue of blue, and I'm specifying the saturation, basically the strength of that blue. So I've really added a highly saturated blue to my highs here, and maybe something over here in the yellow or the orange is helping me look a little bit more natural. Once I've kind of decided what hue I want by going out to the edge of the circle, then I just back off on the saturation until it looks good to me. And the closer I get to the center of the circle, the less saturation of that color I'm adding. So here I've just added, somewhere around in there, I've added some yellow to my highlights. And if I toggle the corrector off and on, again, you can see it's quite a difference. With it off, we've got that green tone, doesn't look very natural. And when I turn it back on, now we've got a richer skin tone, and it looks more like real skin for these guys. So the three-wheel color corrector gives me a lot of flexibility to go in and just adjust the lows, mids, and highs of my video and kind of tweak things out a little bit. Once I've done that, I can play with my gamma gain and so forth, just to try to make things look a little brighter, or whatever I feel I need to do to make this look a little bit more natural. But you can see the power of having the 3 separate wheels and how I used it to pop out the flesh tone of these players a little bit more effectively. Okay, so we've talked about enhancing piece of video. We've talked about some color matching and color correction things with the 3-wheel color corrector and the color curves and so forth. I'd like to spend the rest of my 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so talking about how you might use some of these tools to alter reality. And in specific, I want to talk about the color correction, the secondary color correction tool. So let me go ahead and close this, and I'll close this just to get it out of the way. And what I'm going to do is to add. This is basically the color wheel that we were just looking at, and I've just added it to my timeline so I could kind of demonstrate how this is going to work. I'm going to come over and add the secondary color correction tool to that clip. Now, the secondary color correction tool enables me to adjust a single color independently of all other colors in my project. And I first want to just sort of spend a second showing you how this works, because I think there's a lot of cloudy thinking about how this tool actually works, and I'm hoping I can kind of clear that up for you in a couple minutes, and then I'll show you a more kind of practical use of it. So basically what I can do is to set a mask that zeroes in on one color and then do something to that one color. And in this tool, in the top half, this is where the tool's in the top half of the filter here. These are the tools that I would use to adjust the color. So let's say I raise the gamma. You can see that it's raising the gamma of my video preview window, or the gain is kind of blowing things out. So you can see that what I do up here, if I rotate the hue, my colors in the video preview window just sort of rotate around. What I do up here affects what I see. Now, the bottom half is where I set the mask that tells the upper half what to affect. And let me show you how this works. If I first just show the mask, you can see in the video preview window that everything is white. And basically, what it means when everything is white, it means that everything is in the mask and will be affected by the controls that we were just playing with up here. And since everything is white, when I adjusted the saturation or the gamma or whatever, you saw everything being affected. Now, when I have the mask on, I'll leave the mask on for a second, and let's take a look at the limit hue controls over here. Basically what we've got here is a control that specifies the center of where the mask is going to be. And right now it's set to 180. Well, what does that mean? Well, let's take a look back up at the color wheel. 180 on the color wheel, here's 0, 90, 180 degrees on the color wheel is this color right here in between green and yellow, mostly cheating towards yellow. So by default, my mask is set at a center of 180 degrees at that yellow. The width of the mask dictates how much of, basically how wide away from that color we're going to get. And right now, by default, it's set to 360. Well, 360, as you know, on a color wheel or a circle, 360 takes us all the way around, meaning this mask is wide open, and that's why the mask is entirely white. Now, if I start dropping the width, you can see in my video preview window that the mask is closing down, and it's closing down towards where 180 is going to be. So if I keep closing it down, my mask is narrower and narrower until when I get to 180, if I go all the way down, my width is 0, my mask is totally closed. So hopefully you can see how the hue determines where the mask starts, and the width determines how much of it, how open it is. So let me just set the width to about 50 here. And when I play with the center now, right now the center is set at 180, so you see it over here. If I play with my center setting, you can see in the video preview window that the mask is rotating around my circle. Okay, so if I wanted to work with something other than yellow, I could set it up toward the top, which is red, just by changing the center. Okay, what does all that mean? That basically is just showing you how you can adjust the mask. And I can limit the saturation and limit the luminance if I want to further define the mask. But I think to really understand it, you need to understand how the center and width settings work in the limit hue section. Now if I raise the smooth slider, it just basically feathers the edges and gives me a more feathered look on the video preview window. Okay, see that? So I'll leave that set all the way to 0 for a hard edge right now. Okay, so what all this means is if I turn off the show mask so that we're viewing the picture again. Now remember, I've just made a mask, and if I show the mask, here it is. Remember, anything that's white is going to be affected by what I do with the filter. So up in this red area, what I can do is now use my gamma or my gain or whatever to affect just that section of color. So here's my gain, I'll blow that out. Or drop my raise my saturation to make it real rich, or drop it to make it black and white. Okay, so I can, if I want to, zero in on just that red color and change what I want to change. I can further adjust my mask down here if I wanted just a smaller portion, or I can smooth it out if I want to make it a little more gradual and so forth. But hopefully you can see how that's working and how I can narrow in on one color. All right, so all that was just sort of a pre-education for a practical use. So how could you use this in a practical situation? Let's go over to another clip that I have here, a very colorful clip. And basically, we'll do the same thing. We'll add the secondary color corrector to that clip, and we can find the colors that we want and zero in on them. So let's say I want to isolate this yellow color. Well, how can I do that? Well, the first thing I could do is I could use my select a range, effect range tool to sample the color. So I'm just going to sample that yellow color. And if I show the mask now, you can see that, yeah, just some of those portions that were yellow are showing through. Well, they're not all showing through, so maybe I need to widen my mask a little bit and let some more yellow through. Or maybe I need to change the center and you know, try to zero in on that. Now here's where the saturation and luminance tools can come in. I can maybe adjust these to see if I can widen the yellows up a little bit and try to bring more yellow into it. So here we go. So now we're getting a little bit more yellow from the boat into the picture. So basically I start with the hue and get as close as I can, and then start working with your saturation and luminance and trying to add to your mask. Let's turn the mask off, and we've got this yellow now fairly effectively masked out. So now if I decide to pump up the yellows, I can raise the saturation, or I lower it and take the color out of it. So there you see that we've taken the color out of the yellows. What if I wanted to isolate just the yellow? I want to desaturate everything else and isolate just the yellow. Well, I can invert the mask. Let me turn the mask on, and you can see that it's just the yellow portions that are in the mask. But if I invert the mask, you can see that now everything but the yellow is in the mask. Turn the mask off, and now if I drop my saturation, I desaturate everything except the yellow. So there, if you've ever wondered how you could create that that isolated color look like in Schindler's List, when the little girl walks out and she's got a red coat on, and the only thing in the whole frame that's color is that red coat. Well, here's one way you can do it in your own videos. Okay, let's turn the invert mask off. And let's go back to the color wheel for just a second. Now, we had isolated just the red color in this color wheel. You can see that I have that saturated. Well, what if desaturated? What if I want another color in my video? Let's say I want green in my video. Well, if I want to isolate two colors, I can add another color corrector and start working with my centers and widths to get it right. So basically, if you remember how this happens, I set a color and then I open up the mask from that color. So if I'm trying to isolate red and green, basically what I need to do is to place a center that falls right in between those two colors and open the mask till it hits basically the edge that I want. So let's start with the first tool here, the first color corrector that I have in the chain, and I'm going to change the center. Let's turn this one off. Oops, I think I have the wrong. There we go. I'm going to change the center until I'm at sort of the halfway point between the green here and the red here, which is right in here in this sort of yellow-greenish area. And then I can adjust my width until I hit the edge of the green that I want, and maybe change my center a little bit. And so I'm just tweaking these out until I get to the magic combination that allows me to open up to the edge of the colors that I want. All right, so my center ended up being 171, which is somewhere around in here. So that means I need another center somewhere around over in here, which is 350-ish, somewhere around in there. So for my second color corrector, let me add the second color corrector, and let me set this to 350. I'm going to go 345 and start adjusting the width. And again, I need to drop the saturation down to 0 and adjust the width. And there you see that I can now adjust again until I've hit the edges of my target colors. So there I've isolated the green and the red. So just to review how I did that, I basically set one secondary color correction with a hue center at around 180, 171 I think it was, and opened it out from there. And then I set another one between the green and the red going the other way, which is somewhere around in here, 345, and I opened up the width from there. So you could do this with as many colors as you want. The math gets more complicated as you add colors, but you get the idea that you can come in and just using a combination of centers and widths with progressive color corrector filters, you can start isolating colors. Okay, so real quick, let's see what that might look like in the real world here. What I had done before is I isolated, I got rid of the yellow, and let me see if I can just recreate what we just did in the other one. Let's turn this one off, go back to this one. We had a center of 171 and drop the saturation and a width. If I raise the width, sorry, wrong filter. Let's go back here. If I raise the width, you should start seeing more color being lost, and we do. So if I raise the width, I've now lost all but the red and the blue and so forth. If I turn the other color corrector on and play with its, drop its saturation, play with its width and its center, I can start isolating other colors. So here I've isolated blue and red. So there's a lot you could do with the secondary color corrector, and a lot of kind of special effects that you can do to alter reality. One more thing that I want to do with the color corrector tool, and yeah, I am kind of running out of time here, but I do want to show you one more trick on altering reality with a secondary color corrector. Let's go back to the clip we started with, where we added some contrast and brightness to this clip of the flyover. And let's say we had shot a video, and it was an outdoor video, and we shot it in Wisconsin in July, and everything is beautiful and green. And then we get to the production stage and we realize, you know, we really should have had a flyover scene. And so let's go out and shoot the flyover scene. Well, now it's early October and the leaves in Wisconsin are starting to turn. And you can see we've got some orange and red going on in here. Well, it's not going to look right when we match it up against the stuff that we shot earlier in the year where everything was green. So what I'm going to do is to add the secondary color corrector to this clip. Here's the brightness and contrast filter that we already have on there, and we're just going to leave that. But now with the secondary color corrector tool, now that you know how it works, you know that I can sample a color, make a mask, and then adjust the colors in that mask. So let me go ahead and select an effect range. I'm going to try to shoot for this nice bright orange tree right here and select that as my mask. If I turn the mask on, you can see that I don't have much of what's available, and so I'm just going to use the saturation tools and maybe the luminance tools to sort of open up my mask. And as I do this, you can see in the video preview window, you can see more and more of the trees begin to appear in the mask. And I might open up the width here a little bit. Okay, so I would obviously take some time to do this, but you can start seeing all these spots that are now in the mask. I'm going to turn the show mask off, and we'll get back to the regular clip. Now that we've got the mask, remember, anything that was white in my mask is going to be affected by what I do up in this area. So again, just to see what I've got, I'm just going to do something crazy and put magenta in and saturate it very highly. So now I can take a look at my video and I can see everything that's magenta, and I can further adjust my mask a little bit. If I see parts in there that I think should be affected that aren't, I can adjust my mask and tweak it in. Okay, now I'm happy with my mask, and I've certainly altered reality here, but that's a little too altered for our tastes. So what we really want to do is we want to make those orange and yellow trees green. So I'm going to bring my color wheel down into the green area. I don't want to saturate it too much. I might even go towards cyan and try to get some color in there. Okay, that's looking a little bit better, but they're still a little bright. So let's play around with our saturation a little bit. Let's drop the saturation, maybe the gamma. You just play with the tools that you have at hand and just tweak it out till you're happy with what you've got. So now if I toggle this on and off, this color correction, here's off, a nice early fall scene with leaves are starting to turn, the trees are starting to turn. But if I turn the color corrector back on, I've altered reality so that it doesn't look like the fall. It looks more like midsummer without all the colored trees. So that's the secondary color corrector. It's a really fun tool to use. I would suggest that when we get this presentation archived, you go back and watch the section where I talked about how to adjust the mask and define the mask, and really get a handle on this so that you can learn to use it in your own videos. All right. So, okay, we did go a little bit over budget. We're about 7 minutes before the top of the hour. Michael's got some questions, I assume, over there, and we'll go ahead and answer some of them. We might run over a little bit past the top of the hour, if that's all right with you guys, and see how many questions we can answer. So, Michael, you got anything over there?
Yes, we have a bunch, so we'll not get to all of them, that's for sure. Let me just ask a few. It says, can we depend on the computer screen to give true rendering of the color? Might it be different on TV or projected as a movie?
Okay, before I answer the question, I'm going to suggest that you get closer to the mic, because we've had comments in the past that we haven't been able to hear the question. So the question was basically, can I trust my computer monitor when I'm making these color corrections? The answer is probably not. you might want to get a more high quality monitor and send your feed out from your video preview window out to that reference monitor. If you're doing true color correction work, you're probably going to want to have some sort of a high quality reference monitor. You can get close enough, especially with the computer monitors these days. They're pretty good. For most of us that aren't doing professional color correction work, we could probably get close enough with the computer monitor, but a reference monitor is definitely the way to go if you want to do it right.
Okay, and another one, several people ask, they want to know how you got to the video scopes.
Yeah, I think I was off screen when I did that, so let me show you how to do that. Let me switch back to the screen here. And I'm just going to zoom all the way out so you can see everything.
Terry, you might also mention that the video scopes are only Pro features. That's correct.
Right. Yep. And I think I mentioned earlier that they are Pro only. But in Vegas Pro, you go to the View menu, and just View Video Scopes, and there they are. And they're a dockable window, so if I wanted to dock them here out of the way, I can do that. And as you saw during the presentation, I was I have some flexibility about which of the 4 scopes I want to see. So again, it's just View, Video Scopes.
The next one is, how do you apply brightness and contrast, and I would say any effect, directly to a clip without picking it from the effects list? So it might be, this might be a good point to show the various places where you can apply effects. Like in the music pool, the track.
Right. Well, that sounds like there might be 2 different questions at play there. When I've been adding clips, filters to my clips, I've been going up to the video effects window, choosing it from the window, and dragging it onto the event. That's the way I've been doing it. Another way you could do it is to click the video event or the event effects button. Let's get rid of all the events or the filters that are on there so you can see what it looks like when you don't have a filter. When you don't have a filter on a clip, you can see that the event effects button is white instead of green. So here's one that doesn't have it, and over here's one that does, so it's green. When I click that, if there are no filters in that chain, it brings up the plugin chooser, and here are the same filters that I've been using and accessing through the video event effects, or through the effects window. The same tools are here, so if I want to add the secondary color corrector, I would select it, add it, click OK, and now I'm back to familiar ground. Okay, so that was one interpretation that I got out of that question. Another interpretation is Michael's interpretation. Also is a great thing to know, and that is, what if I wanted to add the effect not to an event on my timeline, but to the entire clip? So, for instance, this clip that I have on my timeline, maybe I've broken it up and I've used it in various places in my project, and I know it needs the same color correction in all those places. Well, rather than going through by event and applying the color correction to the events, what I could do is right-click the event and say select in the project media list. Then in my project media list, it selects that clip, and here then I can click the media effects button. Brings me back to the same plugin chooser. So maybe I want the brightness and contrast filter on that. Add it and click OK. And now that filter is on the clip level. So if I change this, and I'll just do something really wild with it so that you can see it. If I change it, it's changed it not only on the first event, but also on the second event, because I applied it at the clip level up in the project media window. You can also add effects at the track level. So if I wanted everything on this track to be affected, I could click the track effects button, and that brings me to once again the plugin chooser. And so anything on that track would then have the filter on it. Or I can apply it to my whole project. And if I wanted to do that, I could click the video output effects button in my video preview window, which again brings up the plugin chooser, and I can add my filters here. Now this might be a good place to put a question actually we got before the webinar even started. Somebody sent in a question asking about the broadcast plug-in filter, or the broadcast broadcast colors filter. If you need the broadcast color filter, and I could be wrong about this, but I think this filter is getting less and less important as TV technology advances. But particularly back when TVs were CRTs, they couldn't handle the color level that you can handle on your computer, that your computer can handle. And so you would sometimes need to clamp the colors down by adding a broadcast color filter, which would, let's go ahead and add it so you can take a look at what it looks like. And basically what this enables me to do is to just clamp my colors down so that they're more broadcast legal. And let's see if we have, I chose the wrong one. Let's use the Sony broadcast colors filter, and we'll remove the other one. And say okay. So here's the tool that I was aiming for. And basically, what you need to do is find out from whoever you're delivering this to what their parameters are as far as colors, and then throw a clamp on it. Lenient, conservative, extremely conservative, whatever. If you're shooting for NTSC video, you probably want to set it up with 7.5 IRE engaged. So I would just choose one of these presets. And you saw the change that it made in my video over here, because it's clamping the colors down from the 16 or more million colors that my computer can handle down to the more something like 1 or 2 million that a TV CRT can handle. So, okay, that kind of got me off track, but I think I answered the question that you were
I think so.
asking.
And we're going to do one more because we're technically out of time. But I think this is a point that we need to discuss it. So Jeff says, when adjusting color, brightness, contrast, the effect will apply to the entire, he says clip, but I think he means event. When you look at the preview window, you're looking at a frame. Yeah, so is the histogram waveform scopes looking at the frame or the clip? So I think if you showed them how you can put that in real time update, that'll make it pretty clear.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's get the crazy filter off this thing. And oh no, I put it on up. I put it on up here. So let's get it off of there. So that looks a little bit better. Okay, so the question is, when I'm looking at this histogram or any one of the scopes, what am I looking at? Well, I'm looking at whatever frame is active in, whatever frame I've got selected in my timeline. So if I change frames, you can see the scope changing along with the video. So the question is, if I play this, what happens? Well, if I play this, the video is moving, but you notice that the scope is not updating. That's the default setting, but I can click the Update Scopes While Playing button, and with that engaged, now I play it, and you can see the scopes reacting to the change. Now this is going to take a little bit more processing power on the part of your computer, but it's helpful information. And the question is extremely relevant, because if you just color correct, and this goes for basically any color correction that you make, if you color correct just at a single frame and you don't check it in other frames later in the video or earlier in the video, that color correction may not work throughout the whole video, throughout that whole clip or event, in which case you might have to set up some keyframes and change your color correction over time and so forth. So, okay, Michael, you said that was going to be the last question. Are you sticking to that?
Yes, sir. We need to wrap it up.
All right. So let's get back to my computer screen here, and let me bring my PowerPoint back up just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, which I usually do. Okay, so we have several training resources available for you at SonyCreativeSoftware.com/training. The training section of the website. We have tons of free stuff up there, both archived articles from our newsletters and free training videos. We have the archived webinars. This webinar will be archived and up there within a couple of weeks of this broadcast. So check out the training resources we have for you at sonycreativesoftware.com/training, including the seminar series, which goes over the new features of the application. And we right now happen to have a webinar promotion that involves the seminar series. If you don't have the seminar series, now's a great time to pick them up for half price. And the offer expires at the end of the month on the 31st, so that's, a couple of days from now. So if you don't have the seminar series and you want to know how the new features of Vegas Pro work, or for that matter, SoundForge Pro and Acid Pro, then you can go ahead and pick up on the seminar series for half price. All right, we already did the Q&A, so we won't do that again. And that about wraps up the presentation for today. So I hope that you were able to pick up some techniques and some tricks, some of the things that I use. Like I said, I'm not a professional colorist, so I may have shown you some things that might not be technically best practice, but I can say that these are all things that I've used in my own projects, and I haven't had anybody complain yet. So even if you're not a pro, if you understand how these tools work and you're willing to just throw things in there and start playing with the parameters and seeing what you can create, you'll be surprised at how you can enhance your videos and create better looking projects than you maybe have been creating before. So hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope you got a lot out of it. Tune in again next month. We'll have another live webinar. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but we'll figure that out in the meantime. And check back for the archived version of this webinar in a couple of weeks or so. So once again, thanks for being here, and hope you have fun with these tools. So long.